I was ready with my suitcase when my son called me and said, "We're not traveling anymore. My wife doesn't want you going with us." Those words fell like stones on my heart. I stood in silence, looking at the clothes neatly folded in my open suitcase on the bed. 60 years of life. And this was one of the moments that hurt me the most. I'm Luia Fonseca, and today I'm going to share a story about family, betrayal, and a lesson that changed everything between my son and me. I remember the phone feeling heavy in my hand as I tried to process what I had just heard. Gabriel's voice sounded embarrassed, almost submissive, on the other end of the line. At that moment, I realized I wasn't talking to my son, but to my daughter-in-law's words coming out of his mouth. "Mom, you understand, right? Camila thinks it would be better this way. We'll plan another time just for the two of us." Can you imagine? I built an empire of inns from scratch after my husband passed away, and now I was being left out of a trip to inaugurate my own inn. The most ironic part is that both Gabriel and Camila work for me. My son is the financial director of Posadas Arraial, and she's the marketing manager. They have the car they drive, the house they live in, and the clothes they wear thanks to what I built with so much effort. As I faced my reflection in the mirror of my room, I saw the face of a woman who worked her whole life to ensure her children's comfort. My husband Paulo passed away 15 years ago, and since then, I've taken charge of the business on my own. We expanded from a small inn in Campos do Jordão to a network with locations in 5 states. The opening in Arraial do Cabo would be our 10th inn, an important milestone, but here I was, being left behind. Why? Because Camila, my daughter-in-law, has always seen me as an obstacle. From the beginning of their marriage, 7 years ago, she has tried to distance Gabriel from me. At first, it was small things: Sunday lunches cancelled, missed calls, subtle comments about me being too controlling. Over time, the situation worsened. In company meetings, she made a point of contradicting my ideas, even when they were obviously good for the business. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands still trembling. I could cry, I could scream, I could call Gabriel back and tell him how unfair he was being. But something different happened inside me. A slow smile formed on my lips. Not a smile of joy, but of determination. That smile my late husband knew well, the one that appeared when I decided I wouldn't accept no for an answer. I grabbed my phone and called Sandra, my personal assistant and trusted friend for 2 decades. "Sandra, I need you to do a few things discreetly. First, find out what flight Gabriel and Camila are taking to Arraial do Cabo tomorrow." In less than 20 minutes, Sandra called me back with all the information. Flight at 10:25, Azul Airlines, departing from Congonhas. Reservation in the name of Gabriel Fonseca. 2 passengers. Now I want you to buy a ticket for me on the same flight, if possible, not too far from them, but where they can't easily see me. While Sandra took care of the details, I went to my closet and carefully chose what I would take. An elegant straw hat with a white ribbon, large sunglasses, some light linen dresses, perfect for the beach weather and to go unnoticed. I didn't want them to see me, not yet. Then I called Renata, my daughter, who works as the head of the network. Her sister-in-law finally convinced her brother to exclude me from the opening trip. Renata was outraged. She wanted to confront her brother immediately. "No, dear, leave it to me. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way." I briefly explained my plan, and she understood. That night, I could hardly sleep, not out of sadness, but from the adrenaline of what I was about to do. Sometimes, people need to be reminded of the value of family, respect, and gratitude. My son had forgotten that, seduced by Camila's constant influence. It was time for an intervention. The next morning, I dressed carefully. A light blue dress, a straw hat, sunglasses, subtle lipstick. I looked like any lady heading to enjoy a few days at the beach. No, the owner going to inaugurate her new inn. The taxi dropped me off at the airport 2 hours early. I stayed in a cafe, watching the hustle and bustle, waiting for the right moment. That's when I saw them entering the terminal. Gabriel carrying 2 suitcases, Camila by his side, laughing loudly while talking on the phone. My son looked tired, worried. For a moment, our eyes almost met, and I hid behind a column. I watched them during check-in, security, until boarding. Camila wouldn't stop talking, gesturing, probably detailing her grand plans for the opening. An opening that, ironically, was supposed to be my moment. On the plane, I sat 5 rows behind them, on the opposite side of the aisle, perfect for watching without being seen. During the flight, I caught fragments of their conversation. Camila said, "Finally a peaceful trip, without your mom controlling every detail." And Gabriel, my own son, just went along with it like an obedient boy. That broke my heart, but strengthened my resolve. Upon landing in Cabo Frio, where we would take a transfer to Arraial do Cabo, I kept my distance. I saw them getting into one of the inn's cars. My inn. While I took a private taxi I had booked in advance. On the way, I called Sandra again. "Is everything prepared?" "Great. I want you to contact the inn manager. Tell him I'll be arriving discreetly and I don't want anyone on the staff to mention my presence, especially near Mr. Gabriel or Ms. Camila." As the taxi drove along the coastal road with the turquoise blue sea on the right and the colorful little houses of Arraial on the left, I mentally finalized the details of my plan. I wasn't just hurt as a mother, I was deeply disappointed as a businesswoman. The opening of the Arvoredo Inn in Arraial do Cabo represented years of planning, investment, and hard work. It was my dream. And excluding me from this moment was more than a family disregard, it was a professional affront. When the taxi finally stopped in front of the inn, I took a deep breath. The property was even more beautiful than in the photos they had sent me during construction. 3 stories of modernized colonial architecture, painted in a shade of yellow, with wide balconies facing the sea. Palm trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the infinity pool reflected the cloudless sky. I entered through the back door, as arranged with the manager. He welcomed me personally, visibly nervous about the unusual situation. "Dona Luia, your presidential suite is ready. With private access as requested. Mr. Gabriel and Mrs. Camila are in the master suite on the 2nd floor on the opposite side." Perfect. As I headed up to my room, I gave a few more specific instructions. And thus began my silent revenge, a revenge that would teach my son a lesson about loyalty, family, and the consequences of forgetting his roots. Because sometimes we need to lose something to understand its true value. From my room, I saw Gabriel and Camila strolling through the inn's gardens. She was pointing at things, probably suggesting changes, while he just nodded. In that moment, I finally understood. My son had become a prisoner in his own marriage, and I needed to free him. Even if it meant causing a little pain in the process. Our story doesn't start with that painful phone call. To fully understand what happened, I need to go back a bit and explain how we built everything we have today. 35 years ago, when I was just 25, my husband Paulo and I invested all our savings in a small house in Campos do Jordão. We transformed that simple property into the first Arvoredo Inn, with just 5 rooms. We worked day and night, I at the reception and cleaning, Paulo in maintenance and breakfast. Those were tough but rewarding years. When Gabriel was born, many thought we would close the business. "How will you manage an inn with a baby?" they asked. But instead, we adapted everything. I set up a crib behind the reception desk and we moved forward. 3 years later, Renata arrived. Our family and our business grew together like branches of the same tree. With a lot of effort, we managed to buy a second property, this time in Parody. The kids grew up among guests, reservation spreadsheets, and meetings about expansion. Gabriel was always shyer, more sensitive. From a young age, he had a talent for numbers. He counted the inn's cash before even learning multiplication in school. Renata was the opposite, outgoing, creative, and with an incredible talent for cooking. She made small dishes for the guests since she was 12. When Paulo fell ill, Gabriel was just 19 and studying business administration. Renata, at 16, was still in high school. It was 2 years of battling relentless cancer. While caring for my husband, I also kept the business running. We already had 4 inns at that time. I remember nights when I slept sitting in the hospital chair, with spreadsheets and contracts spread across my lap. On the day Paolo passed away, I promised him and myself that I would keep his dream alive, that our children would have the future we planned together. It was the hardest time of my life, but it also showed me a strength I didn't even know I had. Gabriel took a semester off college to help me. When he returned to his studies, it was with a clear purpose, to take over the financial management of the family business. He graduated with honors and immediately began working alongside me. In those early years after his father's death, our relationship was one of deep partnership. We spent hours discussing expansion strategies, analyzing reports, visiting potential new locations. It was Gabriel who suggested creating an integrated reservation system that revolutionized our service. Renata went to culinary school and returned as the head chef of the network. Under her leadership, our restaurants became culinary destinations in their own right, not just amenities for guests. She brought a freshness to our business, with menus that highlighted local ingredients and contemporary techniques. I felt fulfilled seeing my children take over the business we built with so much love. It was as if a part of Paolo was still there through them. I've always been demanding, I can't deny that. I expected excellence, punctuality, commitment, but I also celebrated every achievement, every goal reached. Everything started to change 7 years ago when Gabriel met Camila. She worked at an advertising agency we hired for a summer campaign. She was beautiful, articulate, ambitious. I saw the sparkle in my son's eyes during their first meeting at a briefing. I was happy for him. Since his father's death, Gabriel had closed himself off from relationships, dedicating himself almost exclusively to work. Their romance was quick and intense. In less than a year, they were engaged. It was around this time that Camila began to show interest in working at the company. I have marketing experience, I can add a lot to the Arraial Inns, she argued at a family dinner. Gabriel looked at me with those pleading eyes, the same ones he used as a child to ask for another piece of cake. I gave in, perhaps against my better judgment. I offered her a position in the marketing department under the supervision of our director at the time, Marcia. In the first few months, Camila proved to be competent, bringing fresh ideas and a more modern approach to our campaigns. But I also noticed a certain impatience in her, a gaze that assessed every environment, every interaction, as if she were always calculating her next move. When Marcia decided to retire, Camila was the natural candidate to take over as marketing manager. Gabriel passionately defended her promotion, even though she had only been with us for 2 years. She breathes marketing, Mom. It's exactly what we need to take the brand to the next level, he insisted. Once again, I gave in. The wedding took place in a lavish ceremony at one of our inns in Buzios. I spared no expense to give my son the celebration he deserved. Camila wanted to control every detail, often overriding my suggestions. It's their day, I repeated to myself, swallowing my discomfort. In the first years of their marriage, the changes were subtle. Gabriel started missing our Sunday lunches, a sacred tradition since Paolo was alive. Camila is tired. Camila has an early meeting tomorrow. Camila isn't feeling well. There was always an excuse. In company meetings, I noticed Gabriel rarely disagreed with his wife, even when her ideas contradicted our long-standing policies. Once, when Camila suggested we should fire older employees to bring in fresh blood, I saw my son, the same boy who grew up hearing Paolo say that employees are like family, simply nodding. Renata was the first to voice what I had already suspected. Mom, are you seeing what this woman is doing to Gabriel? She's pushing him away from us, from everything we built together. My daughter has always been straightforward, sometimes too much so. Her clashes with Camila in meetings became legendary among the staff. The situation worsened when we bought the land for the new inn in Arraial do Cabo. It was a special project for me, a tribute to Paolo, who always wanted a unit on that specific beach. It's the most beautiful place in Brazil, I used to say. I invested time and heart into the architectural project, the decor, every detail. Camila, however, saw the project as her big chance. She took control of the launch campaign, scheduled interviews with travel magazines, created an elaborate opening event. There was nothing wrong with that, it was her job, after all. The problem was how she systematically excluded me from decisions, always scheduling meetings when I wasn't available, sending last-minute approvals, presenting fait accompli. Gabriel increasingly became an intermediary between us. Mom, Camila thinks turquoise blue would look better in the logo for the new unit. Mom, Camila has already closed the deal with the magazine for the editorial. Mom, Camila believes you're too busy to worry about these details. I tried to talk to my son several times. Gabriel, I feel like I'm being pushed away from important decisions. This company is still mine. I'm still the president. He always responded with a hug and reassuring words. Come on, Mom. It's just that Camila is very proactive, sometimes she moves too fast. I'll talk to her. But nothing changed. In fact, it got worse. Each week, I felt my son drifting further away, more under Camila's influence. During the rare times they showed up for Sunday lunch, she monopolized the conversation, talking about her successes, her brilliant ideas. Gabriel just smiled, that smile that didn't reach his eyes. The final blow came when, a day before the trip to Arraial do Cabo, I found a document in the corporate email. It was a presentation prepared by Camila for the investors and press who would be at the opening. My name appeared only once in a footnote, company founded by Luia and Paulo Fonseca in 1990. No mention of my current role, no indication that I would be present, no space for my voice, as if I were a relic of the past, no longer relevant to the present and future of the Arvaridoans. It was in this context that I received that devastating phone call. We're not traveling anymore. My wife doesn't want you traveling with us. Now do you understand why those words hurt so much? It wasn't just a family trip. It was my project, my dream, my company, and I was being expelled from it. Months of frustration and repressed hurt came to the surface in that moment. I saw clearly what was happening. Camila didn't just want a good job or a good marriage. She wanted power, control, she wanted the Arvaridoans. And for that, she needed to push me away first from Gabriel, then from the company. I looked at Paulo's photo on my desk, his confident smile, his kind eyes. What would he do in this situation? Paulo was always the diplomat of the family, while I was the pragmatist. He believed in honest conversations, in second chances. I did too, to a certain extent. Forgive me, Paulo. I whispered to the photograph. But this time our daughter-in-law crossed the line. That's when I decided I wouldn't passively accept this blow. I wouldn't cry in corners like an abandoned mother. I wouldn't call Gabriel begging for consideration. I would act, and my action would be as precise as it was forceful. This wasn't just a personal matter, it was business. Camila had forgotten a fundamental rule of the corporate world: never underestimate the person who built from scratch the empire you want to command. With that determination, I picked up the phone and called Sandra, setting in motion the plan that would change everything. A plan that would show Gabriel the true character of the woman he married. A plan I hoped for would bring my son back to his family and values. A perfect plan. After that devastating phone call, I stood frozen for a few minutes, staring into the emptiness of my living room. The beige walls silently witnessed another moment when my mother's heart broke. It wouldn't be the first time Camila tried to push me away, but it would be the first time Gabriel allowed it so openly. I wiped away a stubborn tear rolling down my face and decided I wouldn't shed another drop over this situation. I took a deep breath and grabbed my phone. My fingers, marked by time and hard work, slid across the screen, searching for Sandra's contact. She picked up on the second ring, as always. Sandra, I need you to do something discreetly. Sandra's voice on the other end sounded concerned. After 20 years of working together, she knew me well enough to detect the subtle change in my tone. What happened, Mrs. Luia? Is it about the opening? Gabriel just called me, said I shouldn't go to Arraial do Cabo. Apparently, his wife decided my presence isn't welcome. Sandra's momentary silence conveyed her indignation. Always discreet, she rarely commented on my personal life, but I knew she observed everything with keen eyes. That's unacceptable. What do you plan to do? A thin smile formed on my lips. I'm going to Arraial do Cabo, of course, but no one besides you will know that for now. I explained my initial idea. Sandra, efficient as always, immediately sprang into action. In less than 2 hours, she got back to me with complete information about the flight Gabriel and Camila were taking the next day. Departure at 10:25 from Congonhas, layover in Vitoria, arriving in Cabo Frio at 15:10, where a transfer would take them to Arraial do Cabo. I got you a ticket on the same flight, 115A. They'll be in 21C and 21D. You'll be in front of them, across the aisle. If you wear a hat and sunglasses, they'll hardly recognize you. Perfect, Sandra. Now I need you to do one more thing. Contact Eduardo, the manager of Posada Arvoredo in Arraial do Cabo. I want the presidential suite ready for my arrival, but with absolute confidentiality. No one on the staff should mention my presence, especially near Gabriel or Camila. As I put my phone away, a strange feeling washed over me. I had never needed to hide to visit one of my own ends. I had never planned something like this against my own son, but circumstances had changed, and I needed to act accordingly. I spent the rest of the afternoon finalizing my preparations. I chose discreet, elegant clothes that wouldn't draw attention. A wide-brimmed straw hat, a few light linen dresses, large sunglasses that covered much of my face. I didn't want to be recognized, not yet. While packing my bag, I called Renata. My daughter had always been my confidant, my safe harbor. I needed to share with her what was happening. He did what? Renata's indignation was palpable. Mom, this is absurd. I'm calling Gabriel right now to tell him some truths. No, Renata. I interrupted firmly. I don't want you to get involved in this. I don't want fights between you two. I already have a plan. I explained to her what I intended to do. Renata initially hesitated, worried about the impact this could have on our already fragile family relationship. But as I detailed each step of my plan, she began to be convinced. Are you sure about this? It could be a bit drastic. Daughter, it's time for some truths to come to light. Gabriel needs to see who is really by his side and who is just using him to achieve personal goals. After hanging up, I found myself thinking about Gabriel, about how he was as a child, sensitive, kind, always wanting to please everyone. Paulo used to say our son had a heart too big for this world. Maybe that was his weakness. The gap through which Camila managed to manipulate him. That night, I hardly slept. By 5 a.m., I was already up. I took a long shower, as if I could wash away the hurt I felt. I dressed carefully. Light linen pants, a sky blue silk blouse, a straw hat, and sunglasses. I looked like any tourist heading to enjoy a few days at the beach, not the president of a hotel chain going to inaugurate a new unit. The taxi arrived promptly at 7:30. The ride to the airport was silent, as I mentally reviewed each step of the plan. I arrived well in advance, on purpose. I wanted to be strategically positioned when Gabriel and Camila arrived. I sat at a cafe with a view of the main entrance of the terminal. I ordered a cappuccino and pretended to read a magazine while observing the movement. At 9:15, I spotted them. Gabriel was carrying 2 large suitcases while Camila walked ahead, focused on her phone. My son looked tired, tense. I waited for them to check in and head to the boarding area before getting up. I kept a safe distance throughout the boarding process, always with my face partially covered by the hat and the magazine I pretended to read. On the plane, I quickly settled into my seat. From where I was, I could observe them without being seen. During the flight, I caught fragments of their conversation. Camila was excitedly talking about the plans for the inauguration, how the journalists would be impressed, how this would mark a new era for the Arvoredoans. Finally, we'll show that the chain can be modern, innovative, she said in that condescending tone I knew well, without being stuck in the past. Gabriel just listened, looking out the window with a distant expression. At one point, he asked, "Do you think we were too hard on my mom? Maybe we should have explained better." Camila immediately cut off any possibility of guilt. "Gabriel, we've talked about this. Your mom would want to control everything as she always does. This is our moment. Besides, she's had hers for decades. It's time for new blood to take over." Hearing that made my blood boil. New blood? As if I were an obsolete piece, something to be discarded. As if the Arvaridoans weren't the result of decades of work by me and Paolo, as if Gabriel and Camila weren't enjoying the fruits of our labor today. I kept my composure by taking deep breaths. The plan needed to go exactly as planned. After the connection in Vitoria, we finally arrived in Cabo Frio. I let them disembark first and kept my distance during the baggage claim. I saw when they were greeted by one of our drivers, who was holding a sign with their names. Instead of approaching, I headed to the airport taxi stand. I had already arranged for a private car to wait for me. The driver, an elderly gentleman named Antonio, knew he was to take me to the back entrance of the Arvarido Inn, ensuring discretion. During the roughly 40-minute drive from Cabo Frio to Arraial do Cabo, I took the opportunity to call Sandra again and check if everything was going as planned. "Yes, Mrs. Luia. Manager Eduardo is aware of everything. Your suite is ready with a private entrance. The staff has been instructed not to mention your presence. And well, the other instructions have also been passed on." "Great, Sandra. I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Please inform Eduardo." The car wound along the coastal road, revealing breathtaking landscapes. On one side, the sea in shades of turquoise that seemed unreal. On the other, the restinga vegetation and small fishing villages. Arraial do Cabo wasn't called the Brazilian Caribbean for nothing. Its crystal-clear waters and white sands rivaled any international paradise destination. That's why I personally chose this location for our tent unit, and that's why it hurt so much to be excluded from its opening. When the car finally stopped at the back of the inn, Eduardo was already waiting for me, visibly nervous. An experienced manager with 15 years in the company, he had started as a messenger at our first unit in Campos do Jordão. "Mrs. Luia, welcome. Everything is prepared as per your instructions. Mr. Gabriel and Mrs. Camila arrived about 20 minutes ago. They are settled in the master suite, as requested." "As requested?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Wasn't that suite traditionally reserved for me?" Eduardo swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. But Mrs. Camila insisted that as present directors, they should stay in the best accommodation." I tried to explain that there were specific orders, but don't worry, Eduardo. I'm not here officially, remember? Please show me to my suite. He led me down a discreet corridor to the presidential suite, located on the opposite side from the master suite. The room was spacious, decorated in shades of blue and white, with a private balcony offering a panoramic view of Praia dos Anjos. I approved of the decor with a nod. Every detail had been personally chosen by me, from the fabric of the curtains to the paintings on the walls. "Eduardo, I need you to understand something. For all intents and purposes, I'm not here. If anyone asks, this suite is under maintenance. No one should know of my presence until the right moment. Understood?" "Perfectly, Mrs. Luia." Now, about the other instructions I passed to Sandra, Eduardo felt a bit uncomfortable. "I'm aware, ma'am. Everything will be done exactly as requested. The restaurant is reserved for them tonight at 8 p.m. And regarding the cards, yes, tomorrow morning I need all instructions to be followed to the letter, without exceptions, no early arrivals, no extra help. Are we clear?" "Yes, ma'am." After Eduardo left, I unpacked my bag and took a refreshing shower. From the balcony, I could see part of the inn's gardens. It was then that I spotted them strolling around the property. Camila was animatedly gesturing, pointing to various spots, likely suggesting changes. Gabriel was just following her lead, as always. I watched them for a few minutes. My son seemed like a shadow of the confident and kind man I once knew, always agreeing, always following, never leading. Did he realize how much he had changed? Did he notice how little by little Camila had taken control not just of the relationship, but of his personality? My phone rang. It was Sandra again. Mrs. Luia, everything is ready for tomorrow. All instructions have been passed to the bank. At noon, all of Mr. Gabriel's corporate and personal cards will be blocked along with their reservation. As requested, the system will show a technical error after the first night. They will need to leave the room by noon tomorrow. Manager Eduardo has been instructed to inform them that there is a problem with the reservation and that, unfortunately, all other accommodations are occupied due to the opening event. Excellent, Sandra. And the journalists, have they all been informed that the official opening has been postponed? Only a few will come for a technical visit without the management present. Everything was in place. I knew my plan was drastic, perhaps even cruel, but years of accumulated frustration, watching my son drift further away from me and the values we tried to instill in him had brought me to this point. It wasn't just petty revenge for being excluded from the trip. It was a necessary intervention, a way to show Gabriel who was really by his side and who would abandon him at the first sign of trouble. That night from my balcony, I watched as the couple headed to the inn's restaurant for dinner. Camila wore a tight white dress, expensive jewelry, undoubtedly bought with company money. Gabriel, in a navy blazer, followed a few steps behind like an accessory. I ordered my own dinner in the room, savoring each bite while mentally reviewing the plan for the next day. For the first time in a long while, I felt I had regained control of a situation that threatened to destroy not only my relationship with my son but the legacy that Paulo and I had built with so much effort. I fell asleep to the sound of the waves in the background and a renewed sense of determination. Tomorrow would be the day Gabriel finally saw the truth. And I hoped it would be the day we began to rebuild the bonds that Camila had tried to destroy. The day of revelation would come with the sunrise. I woke up even before the alarm went off, with the first rays of sun streaming through the curtain cracks. Sleeping the night before a battle has never been my strong suit. Paulo used to joke that I had the blood of a general, always alert, always prepared. I got up slowly, feeling the weight of my 60 years on my shoulders, but with the determination of a woman who built an empire from scratch. The clock read 6:15. I opened the curtains and was greeted by the stunning view of Angel Beach. The calm sea, in shades of blue and green, seemed oblivious to the drama that would unfold in a few hours. I did some gentle stretches, a habit I picked up after a back crisis a few years ago, and prepared for the day that would change everything. I ordered my breakfast in the room, strong coffee, whole grain bread, white cheese, and fresh local fruits. As I ate on the balcony, I watched the inn come to life. Staff crossed the garden, arranging loungers around the pool, sweeping the stone walkways, getting ready for another day of work. Work in a place I had created, financed, and developed with my own hands. At 7:30, my phone rang. It was Sandra, always punctual. Good morning, Mrs. Luia. Did you sleep well? Enough, Sandra. Any news? Yes, ma'am. The bank instructions have been confirmed. At exactly 12, all of Mr. Gabriel's cards, both corporate and personal, will be temporarily blocked due to suspected fraudulent activity. The call center has been instructed to inform that the analysis may take up to 48 hours. And regarding their reservation at the inn, the system is already set up. After the automatic checkout at 11, a technical error will appear. Eduardo has been instructed to say there's a problem with the reservation and that, unfortunately, all other accommodations are booked due to the opening event. Excellent, Sandra. Now, please contact Orlando. I want him to prepare a detailed report of all of Camila's personal expenses over the last 3 months that were charged as company expenses. Orlando Bastos had been our accountant for over 2 decades. Discreet and meticulous, he had mentioned on several occasions his concern about the significant increase in expenses in the marketing department since Camila took over management. Expensive clothes to represent the company image, luxurious dinners with potential partners, a complete renovation of her office to improve productivity. The list was long. After breakfast, I dressed carefully. A light blue linen dress, comfortable flat sandals, a straw hat, and sunglasses. I needed to observe without being noticed. I grabbed a book as a disguise and headed down to the gardens, strategically choosing a lounge chair partially hidden by a large hibiscus pot, but with a clear view of the restaurant entrance. I didn't have to wait long. At 9:20, Gabriel and Camila appeared for breakfast. My son, always an early riser like me, seemed to have waited for his wife. Camila wore an expensive pair of sunglasses I recognized from a luxury catalog, a hat very similar to mine, but from a French brand that cost 5 times more, and a silk sarong over her bikini. I watched as they chose a table near the pool. Gabriel, always kind, pulled the chair out for his wife before sitting down. Camila immediately called a waiter, gesturing with that impatience typical of someone who thinks they're superior to others. Even from a distance, I noticed the discomfort of the staff with her tone. I pretended to read my book, occasionally lifting my eyes to watch them. Gabriel ate absent-mindedly while Camila talked nonstop, probably detailing her grand plans for the opening. At one point, she took out her phone and showed him something on the screen. Gabriel forced a smile, but he didn't seem genuinely enthusiastic. After breakfast, I saw them part ways. Camila headed to the inn's administrative office, probably to oversee the event preparations. While Gabriel walked alone to the beach, I decided to follow him, keeping a safe distance. My son walked to the water's edge, took off his shoes, and stood there contemplating the horizon. There was something in his posture, his shoulders slightly slumped, his head down, that reminded me of when he was a teenager facing some difficulty. I wanted to approach him, hug him, tell him everything would be okay, but it wasn't the moment. Not yet. I returned to my suite and called Eduardo. I wanted a detailed report of every interaction Camila was having with the team. Half an hour later, he discreetly called me over. Dona Luia, Mrs. Camila is here, he hesitated, searching for the words. She's reorganizing everything. She changed the reception layout, altered the opening cocktail menu, dismissed the flower arrangement you approved, and is treating the staff with some hostility. Any mention of my absence? Yes, ma'am. She told the team that we can finally do things the right way, without outdated interventions. I apologize for repeating this, but I thought you should know. I felt my blood boil in my veins. After everything I built, all the trends I anticipated, all the innovations I implemented when many doubted, the Arraial Inns were pioneers in sustainability before it became trendy. We were the first to integrate technology and traditional hospitality in perfect balance. Don't worry, Eduardo. Keep observing and reporting back to me. And remember, at noon, the plan goes into action. The following hours passed slowly. From my balcony, I watched the inn's activity like a sentinel. I saw Camila coming and going several times, always on the phone, always gesturing, always demanding. I saw Gabriel occasionally appear, like a shadow of his wife, nodding at whatever she pointed out. At 11:45, I strategically positioned myself in the restaurant, at a discreet table in the back, still in disguise. Gabriel and Camila arrived for lunch at 12:10, ordering the most expensive dishes on the menu and a bottle of French wine. Camila spoke animatedly about the impact the opening would have in the specialized media. We're going to completely reposition the Gabriel brand. Enough of this outdated family and image. We'll be the destination for influencers and celebrities. Can you imagine? With my marketing plan, in 6 months we'll be on another level. Gabriel just sat there, playing with the food on his plate. At one point, he asked, "Don't you think we should at least have invited my mom to the opening?" After all, it was her who. Camila immediately interrupted him. "Gabriel, we've talked about this. Your mom would want to control everything, as always. She would question every decision I make, just like she always does. This is our moment to show we can do better without her." It was at that moment that the moment I'd been waiting for arrived. The waiter approached with the bill. Gabriel took out his wallet, pulled out a gold credit card, the corporate card of the CFO, and handed it to the staff member. Minutes later, the waiter returned, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, sir, but the card was declined." Gabriel's expression was one of genuine surprise. Impossible. Try again, please. The waiter tried once more, unsuccessfully. Gabriel then took out another card, a personal platinum one, which was also declined, and tried a third card. Same result. Camila began to show signs of irritation. What's going on, Gabriel? This is embarrassing. I don't know. It must be some temporary issue with the system. My son looked increasingly uncomfortable. I'll call the bank. I watched as he stepped away from the table to make the call. Even from a distance, I could see his expression change from confusion to worry. When he returned to the table, he was pale. Apparently, there's a suspicion of fraudulent activity on all my accounts. They've temporarily blocked all my cards for investigation. And how long will that take? Camila's voice no longer hid her irritation. Up to 48 hours, according to the representative. 48 hours? Camila practically shouted, causing several guests to look in her direction. Is this ridiculous? You are the financial director of a hotel chain. How can you not resolve a simple card block? Gabriel tried to calm her down. I'll take care of this. It must just be a mistake. And in the meantime, how are we going to pay the bill? How are we going to pay for anything in the next 2 days? That's when Eduardo appeared as instructed. Mr. Gabriel, Ms. Camila, there's a problem with your reservation. Apparently, the system only recorded one night. What do you mean? Gabriel looked genuinely confused. The system shows that checkout is due today by 2 p.m. I tried to check, but a technical error came up that our IT is trying to fix. This is absurd. Camila was red with anger. We are the board. How can there be an error with our reservation? Eduardo maintained the professional calm I always admired in him. I understand your frustration, ma'am. We are doing everything we can to resolve it. Unfortunately, all other accommodations are booked for the opening guests, but we are the hosts of the opening. Camila's voice was getting louder. Yes, ma'am. We understand. We are looking for a solution. Meanwhile, Gabriel looked increasingly defeated, trying to call the bank again, the company's finance department, anyone who could help. But as per my instructions to Sandra, no one was answering. After all, it was almost lunchtime on a Friday. Chaos was unfolding, just as I had planned. Discreetly, I asked for the bill and left the restaurant before they could notice me. Back in my suite, I called Eduardo. How are things over there? Miss Camila is quite upset, ma'am. Mr. Gabriel tried to pay the bill in cash but found he only had $150 in his wallet. I suggested we put it on the room account, but since the reservation has an error, what did they do? Mr. Gabriel asked if he could make a transfer once the bank issue was resolved. I naturally accepted. Great. And about checkout, I informed them they would need to leave the room by 2 p.m. Ms. Camila suggested we host the guests at another hotel to free up a room for them. I explained that it would be logistically impossible. Keep me updated on every development, Eduardo, and remember, no one should know I'm here. The following hours were a spectacle of escalating chaos that I monitored through Eduardo's reports and occasionally from my balcony. I saw Camila pacing back and forth at the reception several times, more and more agitated. I saw Gabriel on the phone, walking through the garden, his expression increasingly desperate. At 3:30, Eduardo called me again. Mrs. Luia, the situation is complicated. Miss Camila is demanding to speak with the hotel owner. She said she will sue the inn for embarrassment and mistreatment of the board. I almost laughed upon hearing that. And what did you say? That the owner was not available for immediate contact, but that we would have a solution soon. Excellent, Eduardo. And Gabriel? Mr. Gabriel is trying to calm his wife down, but she is unyielding. She threatened to leave the inn and look for another hotel in Arraial do Cabo. And she knows we're in high season, that all the inns and hotels are full? Apparently not, ma'am, but she will find out soon. At 2:15 p.m., I finally decided to observe in person. I put on my disguise and positioned myself on a bench in the garden with a view of the reception. From a distance, I saw Camila yelling at Eduardo while Gabriel tried to calm her down. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am? Do you know who we are? We are the board of the Arvaridoans. How can you treat us like this? Eduardo, always professional, remained calm. I understand, ma'am. We are doing everything we can to resolve the situation. It's not enough. I want to speak to your supervisor. I want to talk to the owner of this place. I almost revealed myself at that moment. The temptation to stand up and say, I'm here, dear, was enormous, but it wasn't the right time yet. I saw when an employee discreetly approached and informed Eduardo of something. He turned to the couple. Mr. Gabriel, Ms. Camila, we have a temporary solution. There's a small partner in 2 kilometers from here that can host you tonight until we resolve the issue in our system. Camila looked horrified. A small inn. We are here to inaugurate the newest unit of our network. And you want to put us in a small inn? Gabriel, visibly exhausted, tried to intervene. Camila, please, it's just for one night. Tomorrow we'll sort everything out. Sort it out how, Gabriel, without cards, without money? You're useless, a financial director who can't even ensure we have a place to sleep. Those words spoken publicly in front of staff and guests were like a knife. Not in me, but in my son. I saw his expression change. I saw the pain in his eyes, the humiliation, and something more. A spark of realization, as if he were finally seeing something that had been in front of him all along. Camila remained relentless. You know what? I'm done with this. I'm going back to Sao Paulo. I won't stay in a place where I'm treated like this. And you, sort out your life. She grabbed her bag and stormed out toward the street, probably to find a taxi. Gabriel stood there, holding the 2 suitcases, looking like someone who had just been slapped. Eduardo approached him. Mr. Gabriel, would you like us to arrange a taxi for Ms. Camila? My son seemed to wake from a trance. Yes, please. And what about the partner inn, is it still available? Of course, sir. I can arrange the transfer immediately. Gabriel nodded, defeated. Thank you, Eduardo. I'm sorry for all this. It was then that I decided. It was the moment. I watched my son standing in the lobby, holding 2 heavy suitcases, shoulders slumped as if he were carrying the world. In that moment, I saw again the 12-year-old boy coming home with his head down after being excluded from a soccer game at school. The same lost look, the same defeated posture. My mother's heart ached, but I held on to my determination. Some lessons need to hurt to be truly learned. I waited for Camila to leave. I saw her angrily get into a taxi, not even looking back, not saying goodbye to her husband. The driver put her suitcase in the trunk while she was already on the phone, probably telling someone about the disaster she was experiencing. The taxi drove off, kicking up dust, and Gabriel stood there alone in front of the inn, which should have been his moment of professional glory. He slowly walked to a stone bench in the garden and sat down, dropping the suitcases beside him. He took his phone out of his pocket, looked at the screen for a few seconds, and then put it away again. He seemed to be pondering what to do, who to call, how to resolve the situation. It was the right moment. I adjusted my hat, took off my sunglasses, and walked towards him. He was so lost in thought that he only noticed my presence when I sat down beside him. Tough day, son. Gabriel turned his head sharply. His eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Mom, what are you doing here? I've been here since yesterday. I arrived on the same flight as you. He fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. You followed us. Why? I kept my voice calm, without a hint of accusation. I wanted to see how the opening of our 10th inn would go. After all, it's a project I personally developed for almost 2 years. I chose this land, approved every detail of the architectural design, selected every piece of furniture, every fabric. I paused. Of course, that was before I knew my presence wasn't welcome. Gabriel looked down, embarrassed. Mom, I can explain? No need, Gabriel. I saw and heard everything I needed. Wait, are you behind all this? The blocked cards, the cancelled reservation. There was no reason to deny it. Yes, I needed you to see something that's been right in front of you for a long time, but you refuse to acknowledge. That's cruel, Mom. There was hurt in his voice, but also confusion. Why would you do something like this? Cruel. Maybe. But less cruel than hearing my own son say I'm not welcome at an event for the company I built from the ground up. Less cruel than being excluded by a daughter-in-law who uses the resources of that same company to promote herself. While trying to push me out of the business that Paolo and I built with so much sacrifice, my voice remained steady, more resolute, less cruel than watching my son being manipulated and humiliated by someone who clearly is only with him for what she can gain. Gabriel opened his mouth to protest, but then closed it again. Camilla's last words before leaving, calling him useless, yelling at him in front of everyone, still echoed in the air. You know what was truly cruel, Gabriel? It was seeing how she treated you the moment things went wrong, how she blamed you, humiliated you, abandoned you at the first sign of trouble. He ran a hand over his face, visibly exhausted. She was just upset. It was a stressful situation. Stressful situations reveal who we really are, son. When Paolo got sick, do you think I didn't have moments of panic, of anger, of wanting to scream at the world? But I never treated anyone the way Camilla treated you today. Gabriel remained silent, staring out at the distant sea. The wind tousled his hair, so similar to Paolo's. For a moment, I wondered if I had gone too far, but then I saw a tear roll down his face. She's going to leave me, isn't she? His voice was barely a whisper. Now that she sees I'm out of money, out of control, I placed my hand over his. If she leaves because of that, then she was never really with you, son. He finally looked me in the eyes. What do I do now, Mom? Now we talk for real, like we haven't in a long time. I asked Eduardo to move Gabriel's bags to my suite. I suggested we take a walk along the beach, away from curious eyes and ears. The white sand of Arraial do Cabo sparkled under the afternoon sun, and the turquoise blue sea created the perfect backdrop for a long overdue conversation. When did everything change between us, Gabriel? I asked as we walked barefoot along the water's edge. When did you start seeing your mother as an obstacle instead of an ally? He took a moment to respond, choosing his words carefully. It wasn't sudden, it was gradual. Camilla always said you were too controlling, that you left no room for new ideas. At first, I disagreed, but then I began to see things through her eyes. And what did you see? I saw an old-fashioned woman, stuck in the past, resistant to change. He glanced at me, fearing my reaction. At least, that's what I thought I saw. Gabriel, have you ever stopped to think about how many changes and innovations we've implemented over the years? We were the first in the region to invest in solar energy, in water recycling systems, in technology integrated into services. I've never been against change, just against poorly planned changes that sacrifice our essence. He felt that slowly. I know. Deep down, I always knew, but Camilla was so convincing. She has this power to make you believe what she says, to see the world through her eyes. It's a talent she wields well, I must admit. We walked in silence for a few more minutes, just the sound of the waves gently breaking beside us. Some fishermen were returning with their colorful boats, bringing in the catch of the day. In the distance, the lookout point rose majestically from the sea, like an eternal guardian of that paradise. Mom, about today, about everything that happened, why didn't you just confront me? Why all this drama? I stopped walking and turned to him. Because you wouldn't have believed me? Because words aren't always enough. Sometimes we need to see with our own eyes, feel it on our own skin. If I had just told you, Camilla is with you for what she can gain, you would have accused me of jealousy, of trying to separate you two. Gabriel didn't deny it. He knew I was right. What you saw today wasn't a performance, it was just the unfiltered truth. It was what happens when money, status, and power are taken out of the equation. It was who really stands by you when everything falls apart. And she wasn't. He concluded, his voice choked. No, son, she wasn't. We sat down on a more secluded stretch of the beach, overlooking the islands that dotted the horizon. I told Gabriel everything I had observed over the years, how Camila systematically tried to distance him from the family, how she manipulated situations to gain more control, how she used company resources for her own benefit. I'm not saying this to hurt you, Gabriel. I'm saying it because I love you, because your father and I didn't build all this to see our son being used and discarded when it's no longer convenient. He fell silent, tossing small shells back into the sea. Do you know what's worse, Mom? Deep down, I always knew, there were signs, so many signs, the way she treated the employees when she thought no one important was watching, how she spoke about the company when we were alone, not as a family legacy to be preserved, but as an asset to be exploited. So why did you stay with her? Gabriel gave a sad smile. Because it's easier to believe in the pretty lie than to face the ugly truth. Because she made me feel important, needed, at least in the beginning. He looked out at the sea thoughtfully, and maybe because on some level, I believed I didn't deserve more than that. That broke my heart. Gabriel, you deserve someone who loves you in both good times and bad. Someone who sees the wonderful man you are, not the position you hold or the money you have. Tears finally flowed freely down my son's face, not from shame or humiliation, but from relief, as if a huge weight was being lifted off his shoulders. What do I do now, Mom, with Camila, with all of this? Only you can decide. But whatever your decision is, I want you to know I'm by your side. I always have been, even when you couldn't see it. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, Gabriel shared more about how he had felt in recent years, how he gradually lost his voice, his opinions, even his preferences, how he would wake up some mornings not recognizing the person he had become. It didn't start this way, he explained. At first, she was affectionate, caring, we shared dreams, plans, but after the wedding, something changed. It was as if she had reached a goal and was now aiming for the next, to control the company. People rarely change completely, Gabriel. They just reveal themselves over time. We stayed on the beach until the sky became a blanket of stars. We talked like we hadn't in years, about the past, about Paulo, about the early days of the inn, about how we were a family before we became a business, about values that can't be negotiated, about integrity, about loyalty. When we returned to the inn, it was past 10 p.m. Eduardo greeted us discreetly and informed us that Mrs. Camila had called several times, demanding information on how to return to Sao Paulo immediately. Is she okay? Gabriel asked, still worried despite everything. Yes, sir. She managed to get a reservation on the last flight to Rio today, with a connection to Sao Paulo tomorrow morning. Ah, Gabriel nodded, absorbing the information. Camila was leaving without saying goodbye, without checking if he was okay, without caring what would happen to him. It was the final confirmation of everything we had talked about. In my suite, I asked for a light dinner for both of us. Gabriel was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. After eating a little, he leaned back on the sofa, looking 10 years younger and simultaneously 10 years older. What happens with the opening now? He asked, worried about professional responsibilities. The real opening is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. What Camila was organizing was just a preliminary event for the press. I've already talked to Sandra and we've reorganized everything. He looked at me in surprise. You had planned this too, Gabriel? I'm your mother, but I'm also the president of Arraial. I would never risk the success of the company, even to teach a necessary lesson. For the first time that day, I saw a genuine smile on his face. You're amazing. Did you know that? Your dad used to say that, especially when I surprised him with some elaborate plan. Would Dad have approved of what you did today? I thought for a moment. Paulo was kinder than I was, more patient. He might have sought another path, but the goal would have been the same. To protect you, to protect what we built together. That night, Gabriel slept in the guest room of my suite. Before he settled in, he hugged me tightly, like he hadn't done since his teenage years. "Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me, even when I practically gave up on you." Moms never give up, son. It's part of the lifelong contract we sign when you are born. The next morning, I woke up early and went to the balcony. The day was breaking beautifully, with the sun rising from the waters like a promise of a new beginning. Gabriel was already there, taking in the same spectacle. "Good morning," I said, joining him. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years, actually." He took a deep breath of the sea air. "I've made a decision, Mom." "What?" "I'm going to ask for a divorce when we get back. I can't stay in a marriage based on manipulation and self-interest. I owe that to myself and to the legacy you and Dad built." I nodded, respecting his choice. "It won't be easy, I know. But staying as we are would be much harder in the long run." We stood there, side by side, watching the sunrise in Arraial do Cabo, mother and son, businesswoman and CFO. Two people rediscovering the connection they almost lost. I knew we still had many tough conversations ahead, many adjustments to make in the business and in our relationship, but the most important thing had already been done. The truth had emerged from the shadows. Sometimes, the most important lessons are also the most painful. What started as revenge for my exclusion from the trip turned into a turning point in my son's life. A moment that I hoped would free him to build a more authentic and happy future. That morning, as the sun lit up the crystal-clear waters of Arraial do Cabo, I felt I had fulfilled my greatest mission as a mother, to help my son see his own worth, regardless of who was by his side. "I'm proud of you, Gabriel," I simply said. He smiled with a confidence I hadn't seen in his eyes for a long time. "I'm proud to be your son, Mom." Even when you come up with suspense-worthy plans to teach me a lesson, we laughed together, letting the sea breeze carry away the last traces of hurt and resentment. Ahead of us, the Arraial Inn in Arraial do Cabo shone in the morning light. Another milestone in our family's history. Another chapter in the journey that Paulo and I started so many years ago. Revenge had turned into redemption. And in the end, wasn't that what I wanted all along? When I look back and reflect on this whole story I've just shared with you, I realize that what began as a moment of deep hurt transformed into one of the most important experiences of my life at 60. That phone call from my son Gabriel saying, "We're not traveling anymore. My wife doesn't want you traveling with us." It could have been just another painful chapter in my relationship with him and Camila. It could have been just another defeat for a mother watching her son drift further away under the manipulative influence of a self-serving daughter-in-law. But I decided to turn that pain into action. I decided that after decades of building a hotel empire from scratch, after raising my children alone after losing my husband Paulo, after overcoming countless obstacles as a businesswoman, I would not accept being discarded like an old object that had lost its usefulness. I wouldn't let my own son forget his values, his roots, and who would truly be by his side in difficult times. My plan was risky, perhaps even cruel in the eyes of some. I discreetly followed them to Arraial do Cabo, blocked all of Gabriel's cards, cancelled their reservation at the inn. These were extreme measures, but sometimes we need reality checks to see what's right in front of us. Gabriel needed to see who was really by his side, who truly loved him, and who was just using him to achieve their own goals. When I saw Camila abandoning my son at the moment he needed her most, calling him useless in front of staff and guests, leaving without looking back, I knew that my plan, painful as it was revealing a truth that Gabriel needed to confront, a truth he deep down already knew but chose to ignore. That honest conversation on the beach of Arraial do Cabo was a healing moment for both of us. We finally broke down the walls that had risen between us over the years. I was able to show him that my love as a mother was never about control, but about protection. It was never about limiting his flights, but about ensuring he didn't fall into traps along the way. Gabriel's decision to ask for a divorce wasn't easy. I know that. No one enters a marriage thinking about its end. But staying in a relationship based on interests and manipulation would have a much greater emotional cost in the long run. As a mother, it pained me to see my son going through this, but I was also proud of his courage to finally face the truth and choose a more authentic path for his life. Today, a year after that episode in Arraial do Cabo, our family relationship is stronger. Gabriel has regained his confidence as the financial director of the Arraial Inns, even implementing stricter controls to prevent the kind of abuse Camila committed with the company's resources. Renata and he are closer, working in harmony to further expand the legacy that Paulo and I started so many years ago. As for Camila, I heard she's working at an advertising agency in São Paulo, always posting photos at luxurious events on social media, as if trying to prove she didn't need the Arraial Inns to maintain her lifestyle. The divorce was tumultuous, as we expected. She demanded half of everything, including shares in the company. But our lawyers proved the misuse of corporate resources for personal expenses, which considerably weakened her position in the negotiations. The official opening of the Arraial Inn in Arraial do Cabo took place 2 weeks after that episode, with the presence of the whole family, including longtime staff like Sandra and Eduardo. It was a moment of celebration, not just for a new venture, but for values I consider fundamental in business and life: integrity, loyalty, hard work, and family. This story I've shared with you isn't just about a successful revenge against a manipulative daughter-in-law. It's about staying true to your values, even when it would be easier to conform. It's about finding the courage to confront painful situations instead of pretending everything is fine. It's about remembering who is really by your side in difficult times. As I told Gabriel that morning on the porch of the inn, while we watched the sun rise over the sea of Arraial do Cabo, sometimes the most important lessons are also the most painful, but it's those lessons that shape our character, that define who we really are. To you who have followed me this far, I want to thank you immensely for your attention. It's stories like this, real-life stories that show that no matter our age, me at 60, you at whatever age you are, we always have choices to make. We always have the power to change situations that seem unchangeable. We can always rewrite our chapters. If this story touched your heart, if you identified with any aspect of it, or if you simply enjoyed listening to me, I ask you to subscribe to the channel. Every week, I bring you a new life story, a new experience, a new lesson I've learned over 6 decades of existence. These are real, heartfelt accounts, sometimes painful, sometimes funny, but always authentic. Leave your comment sharing what you thought of this story. Have you been through something similar? How did you handle it? Would you have done something different in my place? This interaction is what makes this channel so special. It's not just my stories, but the dialogue we create together, the community we form by sharing experiences. Don't forget to like the video. It may seem like a simple gesture, but for me, dedicating hours to prepare these accounts and revisiting intense moments of my life, it's a valuable recognition of my effort. I also want to ask something special from those who can. Our channel is maintained with a lot of care and dedication, but we also have costs to produce quality daily content. If this story or others from the channel touched your heart, consider contributing with Value Demes, a small donation to help keep the channel running and bring more stories every day. Any amount makes a difference and helps us continue this work that I do with so much love. Also, check out our other videos. I've shared stories about family reconciliations, overcoming challenges, unexpected love in later life, and many other experiences that can bring important reflections for your own journey. Next week, I'll be back with another story that I hope will touch your heart just as much as this one. Real stories from a grandmother who has lived enough to have much to share, yet still wakes up every day curious to learn more, live more, and love more. Thank you for following me this far. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for allowing my experiences, like that trip to Arraial do Cabo, to perhaps light up your own path a little. This is Luia Fonseca from the channel, reminding you that it's never too late to stand up for those we love, to stay true to our values, and to teach important lessons, even if they sometimes come in the form of a secretly purchased plane ticket and some blocked credit cards. Until the next story. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and if you can, support the channel with Value Demes. Your contribution makes all the difference, so I can keep sharing experiences and life lessons with all of you.